For years, we've told you that great tasting meatballs always start with browning. It might be on the stovetop or in the oven. But a recent trip to South Philly had us rethinking everything we knew about meatballs. And speaking of meatballs, Ashley's here. She's going to tell us what we found. What did we find?
Well, we found that you can make drop meatballs and get just as good of a result as if you made them the traditional way, the browning way.
So no browning.
No browning. Now we're going to use just ground beef for this meatball. We're going to start by making what's called a panade. Now, as you know, panades are used for things like meatballs or for meatloaf. And it's when you want to make sure something stays tender during cooking and retain its shape. So usually we use fresh breadcrumbs or panko breadcrumbs, but today we're going to be using saltines. And the main reason for that is because we found that there was less moisture in the saltines and it made the meatballs less gummy.
Okay, so we don't want gummy, we don't want soggy, but we also don't want fragile.
Exactly.
So this is going to help with that.
Yes.
Okay.
This is 22 square saltines. So I'm going to crush the saltines with this rolling pin. I am going to get them nice and fine. I don't want to get them too coarse because I don't know about you, but I don't want to eat a meatball with a big chunk of saltine in the center of it. All right. This will yield about a cup. And I'm just going to transfer these finely crushed saltines to this bowl. And then for the milk portion, this is 1 cup of whole milk. I'm just going to add this in here. And then I'm going to let them sit for about 5 minutes until the saltines have had a chance to soften. All right, so using this fork, I'm just going to mash it all in until a nice smooth paste forms. That looks good enough. All right, and now the meat. So this is 2 pounds of 85% ground beef. And then we have 2 ounces of grated Parmesan cheese, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a half a teaspoon of pepper. Using my hands, I'm gonna get in there. You don't want to work it too much because if you do, naturally the ground beef, it will get tough. So just until everything is nice and thoroughly combined. We're going to need 24 scant 1/4 cup meatballs. I like to do my first meatball being precise and using the actual measuring cup because that way I can gauge what the rest of the meatballs need to look like in regards to size.
Okay.
So now just using my hands, again, not handling it too much, we're going to do 24 total. So normally we add egg to meatballs when we need it to provide structure. If we were going to be dropping them into the sauce, we didn't need that structure.
Because the hot sauce is going to set it.
Yes. So we're going to finish up these meatballs, put them in the refrigerator, and they can be held for up to 24 hours in advance, which is a great make-ahead option. But if you are going to store them in the fridge, just be sure to put some plastic wrap on top. All right, so the meatballs are in the fridge. Now it's time to focus on the tomato sauce. This is 10 cloves of garlic. And today I'm just going to be smashing the whole peeled cloves of garlic, just like so. You turn your knife to the side and boom.
You're just cracking it a little.
Exactly, yep. I'm gonna do this to all 10.
That's a lot of garlic, but the reason that this works in this recipe is because Ashley did not mince the garlic. Instead, she's leaving the cloves whole. Every time you cut through garlic, or really any member of the allium family like onions, you're releasing flavor compounds. So the less you cut it, the less you slice and dice and mince it, the less of that strong flavor you're gonna get. So this is gonna give a buttery, rich, developed, but balanced garlic flavor.
So now I have a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. I have the 10 smashed peeled garlic cloves, and I'm just gonna set this over low heat. We want the 2 things to come up to temperature at the same time. That way the garlic won't burn or scorch, which is the worst way to ruin your sauce.
And you can't cover it up.
That's exactly right. So I'm gonna cook this for 10 minutes, and I'm gonna go in there with some tongs every so often and just make sure the garlic is getting nice and golden brown on both sides.
Sounds good.
Let's get a look at the garlic.
It smells so good.
I know. So here is a half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. I'm gonna keep it on low heat and just add that in there and just cook them for about 30 seconds until you start to smell that crushed red pepper smell. And it really turns a nice, beautiful burnt orange as well. All right, now let's get going with the tomatoes. Here we have 2 28-ounce cans of crushed tomatoes, 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay. Now I'm going to add in the meatballs that have been in the refrigerator.
The brownless meatballs.
The brownless meatballs. Now I'm not dropping them, I am placing them. I'm gonna bring these up to a simmer, then I'm gonna cover the pot, bring it on over to the oven, which has been preheating at 400 degrees, and I'm gonna cook them covered for 40 minutes until the meatballs are tender.
Smells heavenly. Oh, wow.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
It's Vesuvius.
It is Vesuvius.
Oh, it smells so good. Look at that.
That's a whole meatball.
That is. It's not a broken up piece of a meatball. Just simmering in the sauce in the oven is the key.
In the oven, yeah. So we had the ambient heat of the oven, and it cooked together at the same rate. So I am going to leave those uncovered to cool while we make some pasta.
Okay.
Now here I have 4 quarts of water that I brought up to a boil. I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt. Mix it up a little bit there. And then we have a pound of pasta. I'm just gonna go in there with some tongs, loosen everybody up a little bit. So now we're gonna cook this for about 8 minutes until the pasta is al dente.
Sounds good.
All right, so I am going to just moisten the pasta with some of the tomato sauce, just a couple spoonfuls. And a lot of people put olive oil on the pasta, which always cracks me up because then that means that the sauce isn't going to stick to your pasta. But I do like to moisten it with the sauce, and that will help to ensure that it doesn't stick together.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of sauce to do that.
All right, I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of chopped basil to our sauce here.
Good idea to add it at the last minute so you retain that basil freshness.
All right, and then I'm just gonna gently stir the basil in, being sure not to disrupt those balls that we worked so hard to keep intact. All right, it's dinner time.
And I have to say, I love your proportions here.
Thank you.
It's pasta with sauce and meatballs.
Exactly.
Right.
That garlic is peeking out in there, and it's actually broken down really nicely. 2 meatballs sound okay?
Yes, yes. Whatever gets the plate to me faster.
Would you like any cheese?
Sure.
All right. And this recipe is great for so many reasons, but one of them is because it makes enough for 2 pounds of pasta. So I only made 1 pound of pasta today, so that means I get to hang on to the rest of the sauce, freeze it, save it for later.
I love it when you build in leftovers.
I know.
Great idea. All right. I'm going to have the pasta in a minute, but for now, oh, these are super tender.
My mouth is watering.
These are unbelievable.
Yeah.
Great flavor inside, lots of beefy flavor inside, but I really thought that these were going to just kind of solidify. But they are incredibly tender. This is so bright and fresh. It still tastes very developed because the meatballs were cooked in the sauce. So the sauce took on some of that beefy flavor as well. Perfection.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for super tender meatballs, crush saltine crackers and then mash them with milk to make a panade. Mix in ground beef, Parmesan spices and seasonings, divide and roll into 24 meatballs and chill. Cook smashed garlic cloves in olive oil, add crushed tomatoes, and then nestle in those meatballs. Cook them in the oven until tender, stir in basil, and serve with spaghetti. So from Cook's Country, the easiest drop meatballs. So tender. Thanks for watching Cook's Country from America's Test Kitchen. So what'd you think?
Leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or just say hi.
Now you can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
Alligator.